Thanks, Mehmet, and welcome to the Data Matters community group for our July 31st session. I hope wherever you are in the world, you're having better weather than we are in Scotland, or certainly I am in Scotland. It is sunny today, but it's not been great. Not a great summer. So today we are going to continue a series around practical steps and proven tools to ensure data reliability for your orgs and, more importantly, AI success, the buzzword that everybody seems to be talking about at the moment. But the underlying data is obviously key to that success, and hopefully you'll pick up some hints and tips today that will allow you to gain that success. So very privileged today to have some fantastic speakers. Courtney Prince back again with us, and Caroline De Battista, who will run through some decks. But before that, Mehmet, I think you're going to kind of run through some of the key upcoming events, shall we say, in our calendar, and also a request for somebody to join us from APAC.
Thank you for setting the stage. Thank you everyone for joining us live or virtually. As people are joining, we'll give them presenter rights, so you have the full audio video interaction capability. And if you're joining us virtually, please join the Data Matters community to find out about all upcoming events and reach out to us as well. My name is Mehmet Orun, and I am the North America community lead for Data Matters, a global virtual community on all things Salesforce across roles and across products. Angelica Baffa is our co-lead for Latin America, and we're looking for a lead in the APAC region. More on this soon. We are going to briefly talk about a few announcements, poll you on a couple of interests, and then give as much time as possible for the main event, how the type of tools and techniques Salesforce uses to manage the oldest, most likely org in use out there in the Salesforce ecosystem. Announcement number one, we are looking for someone in the APAC region. You could be in India, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Philippines. Location doesn't matter as much. So you can collaborate with local communities. We can co-host sessions, increase the impact, and also grow speaker relationships or topics of interest. This is all about multiplying our effect. The two requirements are you must have at least one Salesforce certification. And if you're a CGL in one group, you cannot be CGL in a different group. If you're interested, reach out to any of the CGLs of this team. The other, which I'm super excited about, is we are launching a new series in August, Data Matters for not only nonprofits. Nonprofits try to do things in a very agile way to meet their overall objectives. Very excited about the first session, Data Strategy Best Practices for Nonprofits, hosted by Billy Draper. And we're looking for additional speakers for the series as well. If you are dealing with challenges, if you think you have tackled any number of them well, please propose, and we would love to have you. Speaking of that next session, I attended Billy's sessions in Connections, and it was one of the best sessions I have seen on this topic, because it was all about having the language, having the processes defined. What do you need as a nonprofit to drive your business outcomes? And then break it down to different components where technology was not in the top three considerations. The outcomes, the obstacles, the way to do prioritizations were. So we hope you can join. It is not just for nonprofits, but we will have a very strong focus on the needs nonprofits tend to have. Also, if you like presenting, or if you want to start presenting and you're passionate about data, the first data community event is in November, and call for speakers is currently open. Instead of prioritizing specific products, even though products will always be part of the solutioning, we are looking for speakers on data strategy, data integration, whether you use MuleSoft, Data Cloud, etc., data quality, data science and AI, and more. The details are on the website. Last but not least, to get some feedback from you, and we would like to do this more through the chat data capture. Would you like to do a meetup at Dreamforce or right after Dreamforce where we can compare notes as well as share stories and get to know each other? If so, which of these options do you prefer? We can do a virtual session to talk in breakout rooms the week after, or we can seek to meet the week off. It could be the Monday before, the Friday after, which tends to be easier pending people's travel schedules, or we can always declare a time and place and see whoever shows up during the conference. I will give you about a minute to capture your ideas there. And please use chat.
Yeah, Mehmet, just to add, as you put in the chat, there's been an update to Bevy and some of the permissions look like they've changed. So if people are, well, I've made everybody a presenter now. So when you joined, you probably were not able to use audio or video, but you should now have that option.
Thanks, Stuart. So far we have 2 votes in, both for physical during Dreamforce. If you are not responding, I wonder if that means you are not coming to Dreamforce, and if so, you can always opt for a virtual one afterwards also. But physical during those 3 days seem to be the preference. Second question is, we are working on our agenda for after September. There are 3 themes of general topics we could do, but this is for you, so we want to get your ideas. One feedback we got is these sessions are great, but they are broad and they are fairly advanced sometimes. Can you pick just one topic and dive details into it? Like, does anyone use this field was an interesting idea. A lot of people seem to figure out how do you gather the requirements, find out if it's a legitimate requirement, all the way to whether that one field or field value is used. So it's the story of a field from birth to evolution. We can dive deeper into duplicate challenges, archival, it could be any one of these. We could also do specific sessions on data cloud coming from practitioners. This could be evaluation for your own organization. We can look for industry-specific use cases. We can also zoom out to talk about analytics, data storytelling, data integration. So please capture some of your ideas in meeting chat as well. Ooh, Mia is suggesting, how about a hands-on walkthrough similar to AI and data sessions? Mia would love to know hands-on walkthrough of what kind of products, features, or solutioning you would like to see. The AI plus data session is a day-long event, which we will actually have some smaller versions of that in Dreaming in Data. I'm also involved with that community meeting. But for these meetings, since we only have about an hour, the smaller chunks we can identify, the more impactful we believe we can be. So again, please put the ideas in chat. With that, without further ado, I'm sorry, actual today's moderator is Stuart, not Angelica. I don't know what the update had not shown up, but I would like to turn it over to Courtney and Caroline.
Awesome, thank you. I'll just pull it up and share. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. All right. Caroline and I are excited to be here today to share some more practical steps and tools to manage your data. This is a very, I will say, Salesforce and Salesforce focused session. So this is really like what we do today. We'll also talk about like what we did when we got started. We didn't always have a tool for everything, and we don't think it's the right thing to wait to have a tool for everything. So we'll try to share some practical steps that we use. And we are the kind of internal operations team, as Mehmet mentioned. We manage our customer data and data governance in Org 62, which again, as Mehmet mentioned, may be the oldest org that's still being used. It's the very first org we went live in. So we've always had a ton of opportunities to clean things up and improve things in that org. So thank you for taking the time to be here today. We know that data is more and more popular than ever. I think it's something maybe all of us here always knew, but now that the focus has turned so much to AI and automation, the data is becoming even more and more important and something that cannot be ignored. So we're always happy to share our lessons learned. Excited to learn other lessons learned, best practices. We know there's many ways to solve these problems. So really, really love this community here. And then I don't know if we'll have any like product related info here, but I always like to throw this in just in case. This is just a long way of saying, please make any purchasing decisions based on what's currently commercially available. We're not intending for this to be like salesy in any way. I'm not a salesperson, thank God. But yes, just in case we know things, if you're making any decisions, do it based on what's in the product. Okay, so what we wanted to talk about today, I know we've had like a lot of conversations about data quality and metadata, and I think a common complaint that we hear all the time from our users in the business, and I think one of the reasons we got started as a team is that we hear this, like, we have such bad data quality. And the business is feeling pain from that. And when we first got started as a team like 8-ish years ago, we realized that there's really many elements to that. So it could be anything from not understanding what a particular field means. If you have like duplicative fields or fields that sound similar, like what's the right one? Is the data in the field even reliable? Is it even still being used? What do some of the pick list values mean, or like the data that's in there? Like who actually populates this? So all of these different aspects of data quality that are very much related to the metadata itself that lead to it really not being fit for purpose. And so what we wanted to focus on today was really the importance of having good metadata management, governance, and definition, and how that really impacts your data quality. And I think this is a thing that we started with because we realized that if we didn't really understand the data itself, and we didn't really understand the context to judge the data against. So like, how could I know if the data is fit for purpose or not if I don't really know the purpose? And so we realized when we were getting started, we really had to dig into understanding like, what is the purpose so that we could figure out the best way to fix it. And so some of the benefits that we saw along the way was to really, establish the expectations for data. What should this, field do or not do? We established accountability through some of the early metadata management processes by identifying data stewards and owners for fields. We found that this really improved our user experience because we were able to make the even like field labels more intuitive. We were able to reduce clutter on the UI, reduce duplicative fields, and even like clean up some of the pick list values and data in fields that was confusing and misleading to users. And at the end of the day, that really has enabled us to build trust with our stakeholders, build trust across the business, just trust in data in general. And then all of that has really been a great foundation for future automation, being able to drive insights out of the data and AI. Caroline, I forget, did you want to take this one? Did you want me to take this one?
Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah, I can
cool.
take over. Thank you. So as Connie mentioned, I'm leading the data governance operations as part of the team. And unfortunately, my camera has some technical glitch, but there will be more attention on the slides and the presentations. So at Salesforce, there are several steps which we take to onboard new metadata. The data governance starts even before the new data asset. And by data asset, I mean not only fields and object, but record type or validation rules or flow. So before it's created, that's when it starts, and we want to manage it until it's not needed anymore. And while iTools may have changed over the years, this 5 steps process remain constant. My team ensures that it's followed, and I learned how it helps us to build in the org what's truly needed by teams as opposed to just accepted blindly anything, and as well to document the context that's needed to manage that new data set effectively. In the next slides, I will cover each one of these 5 steps in more details. So it starts before it's created and as early as when it is requested. And if we can move to the next slide, we're going to go into that new request governance. So Salesforce changes of our internal org starts with the creation of a request via Salesforce case. It's an actual case record in one of our org that's meant to track changes. The case gather all the details, not only the config changes that are requested, but as well the business justifications for the request. So that case itself will be routed for approval before the changes are implemented. And if the change is related to new metadata, to new field, new object, record type, validation rules, flow, then we are asking the requester to do a few things. First, to check if there's not already a data asset that's serving a similar purpose. And we have data dictionary for that purpose. So these data dictionaries are available to everyone at Salesforce for all data assets that exists in the org, and for critical data, the one that's shared across teams and governed. The dictionaries include additional metadata such as business definition, classification, data stewards at a minimum. So the requester can search if there is already a data asset that exists based on label names, data type, some other keyword searches, and perhaps a field was only added to professional services opportunities layout, and the sales team wants a similar data for their own layout, and they don't know it exists, and they wanted to raise a request, but by checking the dictionaries, they realize they can ask for that existing field to be shared with them. So we're checking the data asset exists is the first step to avoid the creation of duplicate data in the org. Second, we want to make sure that there's accountability for the stewardship. Who is identified as the person who knows the data and how it's populated and how it's used? Also, does that person understand that they will be responsible to maintain metadata associated to that data, approving changes in the future for all requests related to that data? That's something we really want to ensure. We want to make sure the requester indicates the data level of sensitivity. Can it be shared internally? Should it be marked as confidential? Should it be restricted further? And more importantly, in the template that we're providing to requesters, there are several guiding questions to write a business justifications. The clearer the justification, the faster the approval will be granted. It is used to vet the request, and what's important to a requester may not be as critical for the whole organization. So examples of question we're asking the requester is it needed for compliance with external regulations and auditors? Is it needed to unlock new business opportunities, to reduce administrative or operational costs? Is it needed for transactional purposes or for reporting analysis? We want them to really explain why they need the new data asset. And last, a clear definition is needed that describes the intended usage as well as how it's populated and how it's maintained. So to help requester, we have a template that's provided. It covers this whole checklist. It's nothing fancy. We started with a simple Google Doc document to be filled. And once filled, it is attached to the case, which case is sent for approval. And when it's sent for approval, it is then picked up by my data governance team. How it is sent for approval by the data governance team is also worth mentioning. It's based on the metadata as well. So we have marked our most critical object, the one that requires that extra level of data governance operations effort. It's usually the most shared ones across the company, such as account, opportunity, case, contact, users, leads. And these objects are marked as governed. That's a specific metadata we tied to them in our dictionaries. And when a new field or record type or enforcement or automation is then requested on one of these objects, the case will, with the request, will be routed automatically for approval to my data governance team.
A couple of things to add here. We got the opportunity to host an open panel discussion at Tahoe Dreamin' last week, and some topic, we talked a lot about metadata cleanliness and how to keep things clean and get things clean. I think having some of these steps early on in the process are good ways to prevent new metadata from even being created in the first place. I think this is something that we realize that a lot of teams, and especially operational teams, just think of field as a solution to all their problems. But they haven't really thought through all the details of it, and just having them go through some of these extra steps was enough to deflect the issue.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I'll add is that even if we find that the request, is valuable and valid, and it is something we should support, sometimes like the team who's requesting it, they aren't admins, they don't think through all of these things. And so we're also helping them create a complete, well thought out request that gets built by the admin team, so that it works for them the first time, and they don't have to open subsequent cases to get page layouts adjusted or access adjusted as they originally intended. So I think we're also helping people make change more effectively when it is valid.
There's a question in the chat from Galina. Well, a couple of questions actually. I'll read it out. Curious where the data dictionary is stored, who drafts definitions, and if definitions are provided by the business. How do you ensure, and who is responsible for the consistency of the quality of the definitions?
So a couple, tackling them by one, where they're stored. I think I'm going to cover that subsequently. We started with very simple Google Sheets that were created from a copy of the org, and then completing them with aligning with data stewards. They stored, but we actually moved into building our own custom object for those catalogs, for those data dictionaries that really help the scaling. So I will cover that in details maybe when we're open then. For the quality of the business definition, that's a great question. So for custom fields, I think that that's something that our team does, usually with the council. That's what I will explain for those shared objects. But we will be ensuring that the data definition does include all of that I mentioned here, which is, how is it maintained? How is it populated? Is there links to reference documents? Not all fields, I will say, need that level of details. There are some system fields and standard fields that have definitions already established, and we actually are working towards completing the dictionaries with those standard field and system field definitions.
Okay, thank you.
That addressed the
Mehmet's
question.
got a question as well around what do you recommend for organizations that do not have dedicated data governance teams to achieve similar quality outcomes? Very good question, Mehmet.
I mean, even if so, like if there is not, I think every organization should think about having a data governance, some level of data governance team, even if it's just one person into an operations that's focusing on data governance. So, but I will say that we started very small. We started by only focusing on those shared objects and 8 dictionaries by copying the fields and the objects that were already existing in the org, and then asking, business data process owners how they are using them, how it's consumed, or looking at the utilization of those fields. Something we cover a little bit later as well.
Just to give my experience on that, I think sometimes it's more complicated when you have larger teams. Certainly, when you're working across country, globally, you know, there are maybe kind of different types of people that have an interest in governance and quality, who have the kind of own agenda, their own local initiatives that they want to pursue. So that can be a challenge as well when you do have large, multiple governance teams, and multiple people, to kind of get them on that same journey, and get them to work together, because a lot of the time they aren't, they don't directly report into you or your particular function. So it's kind of dotted lines, and trying to encourage and engage them sufficiently to work in a consistent manner.
Right. I think this is where we started a community with representation from various teams. So like our data governance team does not operate and support only one team. We're really looking across domains, across functions, and our councils are really a community. You can make it a little more informal if you don't have necessarily those data stewardship role formalized in your company. You can still have representation at your councils from some subject matter experts within the operations that know that data. The other thing that I think works very well for us is you're leveraging Slack. So via Slack, we are able to actually connect with a lot of team, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people from our company. And our Slack channel for data governance is public, and that's something that really boosts transparency and helped us address those topics for like even before they come to council. We are going to bring them to Slack for discussion.
Great, thank you. Fumiko's asked a question as well. Does Data Dictionary include definitions of all fields or selected key fields? Because I guess they have numerous objects and so many fields in each object. A common problem, I think, for nearly every in Salesforce instance, the volume of objects and fields that people have. So I guess the question is, do you define everything, or how do you pick what's
Good
important?
question. Great question. So first, we're really thriving to have our dictionaries complete above 90%. But with that being said, not all objects in the org requires a data dictionaries. I think that we started focusing, as I mentioned, by the most shared object. I think you could look at, I think that works well here to know how much the data is shared, is to look at, is it a standard or a custom object? How many record types are created that are supporting distinct business process for that object? That gives you a sense of how shared that object is. For our account, contact, case, lead, opportunities, we really want to ensure that we have as complete as possible dictionaries. For less critical data, leaving it to the business domain to decide, but completeness of dictionary is important.
Yeah, Mehmet's asked another question on, do you have a similar approach for pick list field and value management?
Value as in the value of the pick list. So we have, so I think that what will really help us there, and I know we're still on slide 1, I promise I had great slides with a lot of, when I'm tackling a lot of that, but I think that Mehmet, that's a great question. I will think that we have been focusing on the most, critical pick list for specific domain against that shared. So what I have in mind here is like something like an opportunity stage, or the way we're closing opportunities, or case status. It tends to be really, really fast, overwhelming if each teams for each record type define their own status for cases in siloed. We have we're not centrally actively governing them unless the council owns them. So that's why it's like we have two hats. We have the hats of a data governance operations team, and then we have a hat where If that data is actually shared across the company, then we need the council to steward it. Then we actually are actively looking at that pick list and value management. Primarily, we're looking at standardization opportunities for our pick list, and then also there's a question of limits that can be reached on case studies as an example. Then we have no choice, we have to do something about it, and then we will be actively governing it. So the question of prioritization of efforts, I will say at the end of the day, we started with cleaning up our org and objects and fields because that was a low-hanging fruit. We needed to do it, and like so less fields and have better control on the field, then you can maybe tackle values and pick lists.
We'll let you move on past the first slide now.
Thank you. I think the more we're going to go through the slides, the more you will see the process will be more and more supported by product. Like our product level right now is very simple. You saw it at Salesforce org in the case, was in the previous one for that request to be initiated, Google form to really capture those business justifications. Now, as we are reviewing and approving, as I said, maybe those requests, and Courtney put it simply, said this is really helpful that we have a justification documented so that it can actually be vetted and we don't approve everything. Often we send back requester with some guidance and some action items. But so once it's picked up by a data governance team, the first thing that we're going to do is checking that we have that complete metadata, stewards definitions, classifications, and business justifications. So our team, we looked at the quality of those definitions, provide some recommendation to improve it, and we will request the council with us to do the same. As I mentioned, the request, since it's on a shared object, it will require alignment across team, sales, customer success, partner, marketing, technology. So we want to make sure that there's a chance for teams to raise concerns, push back if they want to. So we have those councils in place to formally review and provide that final decisions in step 3. But in step 1, what we start by doing is to leverage Slack to share our data governance, which on our data governance public channel, to share on Slack the relevant details of that request, and then to gather feedback asynchronously. So we highlight the plan metadata so that teams have a chance to look at, is that defined to in a good way, explaining the problem they're trying to solve, the requested change, how it will help the business. We include a few bullets about the implementation and maintenance details, as Courtney mentioned, that really helped also the technology team with the implementation. And then we actually include as well our own perspective and links to references, such as the case itself. So spend a lot of time preparing this communication to think about who are the key data stakeholders that can that needs to be pulled into the decisions and the conversations before the councils. If there are specific questions, clarifications needed, if we have specific concerns. But what I found is that even though we're spending a lot of time preparing those communications, it's extra effort, but it's also very helpful that it's a trail of information about why the field is needed, who requested it in the first place, because that can change over time, and what action item were requested by the council before its approval. It happened, I've seen it, we get questions 1 or 2 years after a new data asset is built. Why was this approved this way? What action item was requested? So having that trail is actually helpful in addition to the gathering of feedback asynchronously. Yeah, and one more important thing to note is once approved, the metadata needs to be part of the build detail for the system admin that will be built a new data asset and should be built with it in the org when it's available. And actually, thank you, Courtney. So the next slide shows that it's a screenshot of a custom field information in the org. There are metadata which can be added to custom fields in the org. Data owner, which we are calling stewards, description, sensitivity level. And so we really request that that data is built in the org when available, so that it is as close as possible to the data itself. And I found it foundational to raise data enablement across the organization, especially if down the line a data cataloging or metadata profiling tool is integrated with the org, because some metadata profiling tool are capable of checking the metadata completeness, building data dictionary for you from the metadata in the org. We started, as I mentioned it, we started our data governance journey with a simple copy and paste of our config org list of fields and objects, the one that are actively governed. And today, that process matured a lot. We recognize that the metadata available in the org is limited. For example, it's not available for record types, for validation rules, for perm sets. So then we build our own metadata catalog tool. Okay, so, and now I think I'm more product focused. We build it. Go ahead.
So there's a question from Susie Campbell. Can you populate these fields using a mass upload?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
And an API as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It started with a desire to better govern our access, a perm set, and a profiles. We wanted clear point of contacts for approval. And by we, I mean not our data governance team, but really the team responsible for access control of the org. And they needed the same metadata that we were managing, classification, data stewards, and basically that team created a custom object that over the year was enhanced into a full metadata catalog tool. Really what happened is that I think that team was tired of taking our spreadsheets as a source of truth and uploading it to update classification, and they just asked us if we could enhance that object instead, so that we turned it into a data governance object. Metadata catalog, I should say, not data governance.
I've got a question as well. Are there any tools, or did you use any tools to, I guess, analyze the metadata, or analyze, obviously we're looking at large volumes of data with a lot of detail. Is there any specific tool that you used in that kind of process?
To analyze the metadata on top of that object?
Yes.
Is that your question? Yes, absolutely. So we have built, so we can switch.
So I might jump in ahead.
Couple of slides, yes.
You're just a perfect segue, actually.
I totally unplanned.
And I don't have that in there as well. Like, Courtney, I think even like next slide, but I think like I can do a voiceover if you want to go back to that slide with our metadata catalog, if it's okay. But we actually build, because it's now in an object, then it's easy for us to do to build some dashboard so that we can track metadata quality, such as completeness or uniqueness, so that we don't have duplicate records. So we have that in place. There's also some validation rule enforcement to avoid that we have bad metadata quality. So we're talking about data quality. There's even a whole thread around metadata quality that really follows the same data quality dimensions, right? Completeness, uniqueness, accuracy. So yes, the short answer is yes. We've been building on top of that metadata catalog for metadata quality.
So there's an additional question from Fumiko, just following on from Susie's question. Does that mean, in reference to mass or bulk uploads, does that mean we can populate description fields in bulk? And what tool would you use for that?
Yeah, great question. So I think that's what I wanted to show you, is the strengths of that tool, of that object as well. And I promise I will address your question, but I wanted to present that first, is that there's various sections. The section that you see highlighted in yellow here that says detailed is actually integrated with the org to get all that metadata sourced directly from the org. So if a field is built with a definitions and a data owner and a classification, it will be creating that metadata record with it. And we don't want to update that then. We want to update it and manage it directly into the org when it exists. There's additional metadata that's needed for governance that's not in the org, such as a domain, which domain that data is associated to, or what is the justification for deprecation or for history tracking. So we added additional governance detail, additional metadata, which these metadata can be manually entered or uploaded via data loader. We have also implemented, to keep that metadata quality, we have implemented some permissions level. So like data stewards have permissions to update their own record, and anyone else can ask change requests on that dictionary to improve the quality. The data stewards will be the one that will need to implement that change, review it, and implement it.
I think Susie and Fumiko might be asking about bulk loading the fields in the org.
Like creating the field in bulk?
The in org fields, like the standard fields that are in the in setup.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I think there's what I understand is there's like the way that these are built are kind of in two different spots in the back end, and you can use what we've been told is the metadata API to do that, but you have to have admin access to update some of them, especially things like the name, the label, even the help text are things that you'd have to have admin access for. But the sensitivity, the compliance categorization, and whatnot are, I think there's a bulk load tool for sensitivity, but I'm not sure about the others. We could look that up and get back to you.
There's I forgot if it's called data governance or compliance permissions for data sensitivity level and compliance categorizations. And I believe that description, field label, field name, data owner, you will need to have admin access, but they can all be updated via data loader. Did that answer the question?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it looks like Susan and Fumiko are good. And then Mehmet shared another article. So thank you.
One last point on our custom app is that for us, it was an enabler of scale. So we started leveraging it for metadata management. We were able to then create over 300 dictionaries across 5 orgs, and it was easier to, I will say, even enable or train data stewards on updating their metadata, because it has the same look and feel as any other Salesforce object. And so we started with, remember, like 16 dictionaries, and we started with 1, but then we went to 16 dictionaries managed on Google Sheets. And once we implemented that metadata catalog, then we were able to create over 300 across 5 orgs. We still have a Google Sheet dictionaries. It's a good format for some end users, especially in the business that are not, metadata is rather stable. It's not changing every day. So we, from a business perspective, for business user, Google Sheet dictionaries is a good format to communicate with them, but they are actually automatically refreshed directly from the metadata catalog. And in addition to our Google Sheet dictionaries that's automatically created, that metadata in this metadata catalog, it's used for routing the org changes approval, to publish the dictionaries not only in Google Sheet, but in Slack workflow, Tableau CRM analytics, where we are tracking our metadata quality, some standard Salesforce report. We have also alerts for invalid data stewards who left the company or changed role at Salesforce. I found that very powerful. So because it's linked to actually a Salesforce user, then you can know if they are changed role, if they are left the company. We have alerts for missing data classifications, and we managed our data asset deprecations. And having this tool is great, but of course the metadata quality continue to rely heavily on data stewards' willingness to keep it up to date. And this is where...
Yeah, so yes, Mehmet's got a few questions around why the reason behind using Google Sheet dictionaries.
I found that some users, some data stewards sits into the business operations. They maybe stewards only one field on those shared object, and we will contact them once in a quarter. I found it's a lot easier for them to find. Everybody knows how to use Google Sheet. It's just easier.
Yep. Okay.
We do have automations that populate those at this point, so we're
Right.
it's not creating extra work at this point.
Okay, makes sense.
That's right. And it's only one channel among other channels where it can be found, where that data dictionaries can be found. So I think the topic of metadata quality came up. So we have two ways. I'm going to try to do a high level summary, but we have two ways. We have centrally launched campaign. They are scheduled. They are started by my team for that purpose. In Q1, my team will do an audit of data classifications. What we will do is looking at data type and looking at things for, is there some inconsistencies between the classification in the data type, like a currency field will most likely be restricted. Is it right to have it unrestricted? We do that audit on a yearly basis. And then Q3, we launch a data dictionary refresh campaign. For this purpose, what we do is that we create a temporary Slack channels, we add all our data stewards to it, and then we encourage them to leverage our Tableau dashboard, a Tableau CRM analytics dashboard, which was built for reviewing classification, data stewards definitions, and if the field is still be used or not, or it should be listed for deprecations. We also run some metadata analysis. We run metadata analysis for invalid data stewards, the one who left the company, for data assets that's indicated as stewardess by senior VP and above. And yes, it happened. Then in that case, we're not going to treat with them the same way. We're going to start personal one-to-one Slack message asking who from their team will be a better suited data stewards. And for data stewards who have over 100 data assets assigned to their name, what we can do is also scheduling some work sessions beforehand. But the beauty of it is that our metadata catalog provides this information. The data stewards, like I mentioned, is linked to a Salesforce user record. So there are alerts built that indicate when someone changed roles, left the company, or if their seniority level is really high up without sharing any of the HR related confidential information. And like as I mentioned, anytime stewards can also in a self-service access those data dictionaries and keep them clean via Slack workflow, reports, Google Sheet, and dashboard. Last year, to give you an idea, we reached out to over 290 data stewards and updated about 20% of our governed field, like about 2,000, and submitted over 650 fields for deprecation after our campaign. Oh, okay. Quality and utility. So this is where it's getting really fun. So this is where we're branching a little bit. So in our metadata lifecycle, remember step 1, 2, we onboarded it with a strong justification, clear accountability for maintenance. Step 3, we ensured the metadata is maintained. And I'd like I'd like to speak a little bit about the metadata quality and the utilization audit. I think I mention it, the metadata quality, from my perspective, it's about the same dimension of data quality, completeness, timeliness, accuracy, uniqueness. And we have our data dictionaries and a Tableau CRM analytics that have KPIs measuring completeness of the metadata. It's shared with everyone at Salesforce. It's also a metric that's tied to our team as well as our data stewards performance. So we're looking at dictionaries that are above 90% completeness, and that's a metric that's captured. For utilization audit, I'm going to go a little bit fast, but those are actually really important. From an utilization audit, it's been a journey. In the past, we relied on requests to our technology team to run field trip analysis. These requests were long, they were taking weeks, prepared and handed over to us. The first year's field trip was very helpful and enough to do some cleanup, but as we addressed all the low-hanging fruits, now it became not as helpful. And between the delay to get the results, the limits on profiling field in field trips such as checkbox and long text area, and the burden on the org to run it, it was becoming very difficult to get that insight. Today, I'm very happy that we started I was going to say playing around, but testing that insight and that utilization with PeerNova and Q9 from PeerNova, that it was able to give us that insight on population and net population much faster. And I just felt that we have the right tool in our hand to be able to go back to looking at utilization audit.
I think one other thing I want to add about that is that, like as Caroline mentioned, like we have always had to play this game of prioritization, and like what our team's been able to focus on and has had the time to focus on is really that shared data that impacts multiple teams on those core like hero objects in the org. But what we would really like to do is enable our data stewards to kind of manage and audit their own data as well. And so I think this, like the Cuneiform tool, is going to be something that like we're testing out with stewards now, but it's in the org, it's easy to use. And it will empower stewards to manage like some of their own data that we have not had the capacity to dig into, like on objects outside of our core objects. So we're excited to get more tools into the hands of our stewards, because we cannot do it all.
That's true. That's a great point, actually. I found that the tools changed, but the question we ask ourselves also, they remain constant. So at the object level, we're looking at which fields are empty from all time, from one last year, and fields unused across all record type can be considered for deprecations. Fields always populated with their set default value. That's interesting too, to look at it, because they can surface a need for a better enablement or also deprecation. At the record type level, we're looking at what's the volume of records by record type, who's the top creator of records by record type, and understanding that usage by record type that provides a better understanding of the main stakeholders and business processes that the data serve. For example, on our case object, we had over 70 record types defined, but 78% of our records are created only by 3 teams: customer support, billing operations, sales operations. What's becoming very interesting is that then my team, looking at that, make sure that we have representation from this team at our case data governance councils to vet all the requests. And at the field level, who are the top offenders, so like the creators of records without a minimum data required, which active pick list values are not used, which active pick list values are duplicates, what are the volume of records, which the value format is invalid. And I know we're branching a little bit on data quality here, but I feel like getting that insight and surfacing those problems allows them to handed them over to data stewards that can focus on double clicking on the root cause and data quality and that to fix them.
Yeah, and at the end of the day,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say one more thing that I found like is a good example that was for me eye-opening, that it happened last week, is that I looked at what's our top 25 accounts with the most contacts attached. And I'm not going to share the volume of contacts on that 25th account, but it was really large number of contacts, and will not be able to do that cross-object analysis without some complex SQL. It's definitely not available out of the box from reports.
Yeah, but I think all of this is allowing us to understand, like a field could have been built with one way of using it in mind, but our users can be quite creative. And so kind of circling back around and actually auditing that and seeing how it's used, if it's used, are we actually getting the value out of it that we intended? I think this is helping us then, make sure the data is useful, make sure that it is intuitive to the users, and we're not just adding another field that the sales team just accepts the default and hits the next stage of the opportunity because it doesn't mean anything to them.
Absolutely. And that thing on the next slide, we have some screenshots. On the left, that's the Tableau CRM dashboard that I referred to, which is a field data dictionary dashboard that shows the percentage of governed field missing key metadata. The data is really, it's not real data. It's really just to show you how it looks like. But we have those KPIs, and we really focused our dashboard to help our data stewards, like checking data stewards, checking description, checking classification of what they own. On the right side is the dashboard built with Cuneiform. It shows the number of records by record type year over year, so you can see how that object is used by which team and how it fluctuates year over year. Okay. Last step, but not least, of our metadata management lifecycle is the deprecation process. And that's a very interesting one because also I felt like talking to other teams at Salesforce with that are manipulating data, with the only team that's been doing it into our org. And I felt for some area it's working very well. So what we did well, we implemented a process that enabled not to wait for the fields to be fully deprecated to declutter the org, privileging really the end user's experience. What initially did not work so well, it was difficult to track the deprecation progress as well as which field to prioritize, and for several reasons: unclear stewardship and urgency, or lack insight on dependencies, a volume of field that was submitted for deprecation so large that it was hard to track progress at the field level, and especially with Google Sheets, which is what we were using at the beginning. And this is another process that we actually have moved into our metadata catalog for better tracking. And this is where other tools like Cuneiform to understand field unusage, I will say, is really helping us. Not only understanding field unusaged, but I would like to see us also how the field is used, like its dependencies, how difficult it will be to get rid of it. And so today we're in a much better place. What we're doing during that process is that we start with a list of fields which we identified as candidates for deprecation, which people can submit via Slack or directly in our dictionaries or directly in the metadata catalog, or that we identified thanks to usage analysis. And once they are identified, what we will do is that we will be validating them with data stewards. So we gather all those fields, we'll list them, and then we post on our Slack public channels many communication. One heads up, these are the fields that we're planning to deprecate. Fill a form if you want, please fill a form if you want to request save a field. That save a field request will need to be really reviewed and justified. We just don't remove the field from the list if it's asked. And then we even sent reminders 2 weeks later. So we have a very strong communication. We found that that's needed during that process. But the interesting part is step 3. What we do is that we change the field label name so that they are easily recognizable in the org. So we create a prefix ZZZ underscore. And so all fields with a label name ZZZ underscored are actually listed for deprecations. This is followed by new communications, of course, and that those field label names are changed. And our next step from that will be to actually hide those fields from human users. We're keeping them for API users, automations, do not break anything, but they are removed from layout so that human users are not seeing them anymore. And then on step 4, technology partner works in resolving those downstream dependencies and gathering green lights. And they do all that in metadata catalog.
Caroline, just to say we're kind of up on time, unfortunately, but asking too many questions earlier on. But yeah, if you want us to summarize, I won't cut you off completely.
I was good. I was just covering that deprecation process. I found it's something that worked very well for us, relies on strong communication on Slack. But this is where tools really helped us get control over that process and get tracking and progress on those fields. That's it. I think the last slide I had was just to remind people that metadata cataloging, metadata quality, that's as Courtney mentioned, is the foundation to understand data. And like, you don't know that you're fixing data quality if you don't know what you're trying to fix, which is captured in metadata. So we have our KPI set up to metadata quality. We encouraged our data stewards to have measures set up to that data to metadata quality. They fit perfectly in support of our corporate objectives. We have a link to what a V2MOM is here on Salesforce blog. It's interesting also to read out. But yep, thank you for your time. Apologies for running a little bit over and to not take more questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was fantastic. The content and delivery, Caroline and Courtney, that was great. Mehmet's clapping. That was a good sign.
Mhm.
Yeah, obviously we're out of time, but I think if there are questions or follow-ups, please reach out to us in the community, and we will respond to everything. If you want to come back to us or have some thoughts later on, please reach out and we'll get back to you. Mehmet, any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, if you haven't joined the community yet, please do so. So when you get one email about upcoming events, whenever we have one set up, and then you get a reminder email when you sign up and one afterwards. So spam-free community, reach out to any of us if you want to dive into further topics. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, whatever time it is there, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.